Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. Today we're going to talk about some prehistoric petroglyphs in in Western India. And so they found this stuff was right under their noses for the longest time. Even the locals didn't even know that these petroglyphs existed. There are these rock carvings believed to be tens of thousands of years old in the western part of India, Maharashtra, I think that's what it's called right here. And they think this opens up a whole new avenue of discovery and inquiry because, again, like I said, they didn't even know these things existed. So they're on top of these hills, and you can only see them from the top, from an airplane, from an aerial view. I mean, you could kind of make it out on the ground, but for the most part, you can't get a clear image unless you're in the sky. And it's kind of like crop circles in that sense, right? So it makes sense that even the local villagers didn't even know about that these things existed. So it's in the Konkan region. So just to give you guys a visual, so this is India. So this leftern long part is this region here, the Konkan districts. And then more specifically, it was found near these hilltops near Ratnagiri. And another place, I think Rajapur. And their are images etched on the rocky flat hilltops. So these are hills, but they're flat at the top. And they've gone unnoticed. So here's a picture of one of them. Some of them were out in plain view. Others were hidden beneath some layers of soil and mud, and they just had to wipe them away. Some were considered holy and worshipped by some locals in some of the areas, but for the most part, they did not know about that these things existed. So they depict certain things like animals, birds, humans, geometry, and some of the animals are interesting, which we'll get into in a second. But the date that they've come up with, and I don't know about the hard evidence, but this is just their ballpark just from looking at it. The experts believe that these petroglyphs are probably the oldest ever discovered, and they probably go around 12,000 years ago, like 10,000 BC. So there's that magic number again. So the credit for the discovery goes to a group of explorers led by Sudhir Rizbud and Manoj Marath, who began searching for the images in earnest after observing a few in the area. So these guys did a lot of footwork. Once they found them, they started going around everywhere, and they started asking the locals. They went to all the village temples, and they even went to schools. And he says they walked thousands of kilometers. People started sending photographs to us, and we even enlisted schools in our efforts to find them. We made students ask their grandparents and other village elders if they knew about any other engravings. This provided us with a lot of valuable information. I wonder, they didn't go into specifically what the elders said, but I would like to know what they said, because it must have been valuable enough for them to base a few predictions and some conclusions based on that information, or at least they were leads to something else. Here's another petroglyph, which is really, I mean, that is just some geometry, but still that is old as hell, you can tell. So someone went out of their way to do that. They found petroglyphs in and around 52 villages, but only around 5 villages were aware that the images even existed. They documented the petroglyphs, and then they lobbied the authorities to get involved in studying and preserving them, which they are doing. And we'll get some photos of some of the art in a second. They say that they appear to have been created by a hunter-gatherer community that was not familiar with agriculture, but they only say that because there's no pictures of farming. All they depict are hunted animals and different animal forms, sea creatures, and other small game animals. One doctor who is an art historian, he believes that these images are clearly inspired by things observed by people at the time, and you can see that in other caves too, like at the Lascaux caves and the Chauvet caves in France. They depict animals and stuff that were that were native to the area at the time. Most of the petroglyphs show familiar animals. They're images of sharks and whales, as well as amphibians and turtles. But some of the petroglyphs depict animals like hippos and rhinoceros. So they aren't found in that part of India. So either these people migrated from Africa, or these animals once lived in India. Now, keep in mind that this is on the western coast of India, which is pretty close to, at one point it was close to Africa. And if we go way back, then India and Madagascar used to be connected to each other, I think. And I don't know how long ago that was, but if that's the case, then India at some point was it was a lot closer to Africa than it is today. So that's something that I thought about when they mentioned the hippos and rhinos. The state government has set about 3.2 million or 2.5 million euro to study the 400 petroglyphs, and probably counting. There's probably way more too. But why petroglyphs? Like, I don't understand. So if they're right and they were created 10,000 BC, which seems kind of conservative to me, why would they do that when you can't really see it unless you're in the sky? So that's a big mystery in and of itself. But the fact remains that they did do it, and it's just one big mystery. So what do you guys think about this specific discovery, as well as petroglyphs in general? India back in those days, do you think there are people there? I mean, there are a lot of the texts, like especially the Vedic texts that originate in India, they speak of a time thousands and thousands of years in the past where there was like a great kingdom, and then there was a great sundering, and then there was obviously a flood, and all of this crazy stuff happening in the remote past, in prehistory, so to speak. Maybe there's a connection there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.